power isn't given, it's taken. While most philosophers spent centuries debating how the world should be, one man focused on how it actually works. Niccolò Machiavelli stripped away moral pretense to reveal the raw mechanics of human control. His insights were so disturbing that name became synonymous with evil cunning, yet today his techniques silently shape politics, business, and even your personal relationships. What Machiavelli discovered isn't just how rulers control nations, but how human beings can be led, influenced, and yes, manipulated. Today we'll explore the forbidden wisdom that the powerful don't want you to understand, the actual mechanics of control that have remained unchanged for 500 years. Part 1: The truth about human nature. Machiavelli's genius wasn't in creating manipulation tactics, it was in seeing humanity clearly without illusion. While his contemporaries described humans as they wished them to be, Machiavelli described people as they actually are. Men are so simple of mind and so much dominated by their immediate need that a deceitful man will always find plenty who are ready to be deceived. This observation forms the foundation of Machiavellian thinking. People respond primarily to self-interest and immediate concerns, not abstract principles or distant consequences. The conventional wisdom tells us that humans are rational, consistent beings who make decisions based on careful consideration. Machiavelli knew better. He observed that people are driven primarily by two forces, fear and self-interest. Most human behavior, regardless of how it's rationalized, stems from these twin motivators. This isn't cynicism, it's realism. When you strip away social niceties and moral justifications, human behavior becomes remarkably predictable. People consistently choose self-preservation over principle. They favor immediate benefits over long-term advantages. They follow strength and abandon weakness. Consider how easily public opinion shifts when circumstances change. The same population that demands war after an attack will protest for peace when the casualties mount. The employee who praises management in public criticizes them in private. The friend who promises undying loyalty disappears when supporting you becomes inconvenient. Machiavelli didn't judge this human inconsistency, he simply recognized it as the terrain on which power operates. Understanding this terrain gives you a map that others lack. His most profound insight was that morality itself is largely performative rather than substantive. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. This gap between appearance and reality creates the space where manipulation thrives. People judge others primarily by appearances and results, not intentions or methods. This is why the appearance of virtue is often more important than virtue itself. The leader who maintains a public image of honesty while privately cutting corners will typically be more successful than one who is actually honest but appears weak or indecisive. This truth extends beyond politics into everyday life. The colleague who loudly announces their contributions is often valued more than the quiet worker who actually drives results. The romantic partner who makes grand gestures is often perceived as more loving than the one who provides consistent, unshowy support. By understanding the gap between perception and reality, you gain a crucial advantage: the ability to shape perceptions rather than simply reacting to them. This is the first principle of Machiavellian control: not manipulating people against their nature, but working with human nature as it actually exists. Part 2: Fear versus love. The mechanics of control. Machiavelli posed a question that still resonates: is it better to be loved than feared, or feared than loved? His answer was unequivocal: if one cannot be both, it is far safer to be feared than loved. This counterintuitive insight challenges our conventional understanding of leadership and influence. We're told that inspiring love and loyalty is the highest form of leadership. Machiavelli recognized that while being loved is certainly advantageous, it's also dangerously unstable. Love depends on obligation, and men are generally ungrateful, fickle, dissemblers, anxious to avoid danger, and covetous of gain. When self-interest conflicts with affection, self-interest almost always wins. The subordinate who claims to love their leader will often abandon them when a better opportunity arises. The friend who professes eternal loyalty will often disappear when that loyalty becomes costly. Fear, by contrast, provides a more reliable foundation for control. Fear is maintained by a dread of punishment that never fails, while love is withdrawn the moment it becomes inconvenient. Fear remains constant. People might stop loving you, but they rarely stop fearing negative consequences. This doesn't mean ruling through terror or cruelty. Machiavelli makes a crucial distinction between fear and hatred. A prince should inspire fear in such a way that if he does not win love, he avoids hatred. Fear becomes counterproductive when it transforms into hatred, which actively motivates people to seek your downfall. The most effective form of fear isn't the fear of random violence, but the fear of consistent consequences. The leader who arbitrarily punishes creates hatred. The one who enforces clear rules creates productive Fear this dynamic extends far beyond formal leadership. In negotiations, the person who can credibly threaten to walk away holds power over the one who is emotionally invested. Agreement in relationships, the partner who needs the relationship less often controls its terms. In social groups, those who can grant or withhold approval hold influence over those who crave acceptance. The application is clear: to maintain control, establish yourself as someone who can impact others' outcomes positively or negatively. Make others depend on you more than you depend on them. Create circumstances where alignment with your interests becomes others' path of least resistance. The modern workplace illustrates this principle perfectly. The boss who is friends with everyone often struggles to maintain discipline and performance. The one who maintains professional distance while clearly communicating expectations and consequences typically achieves better results. They're not loved, but they're respected, and respect coupled with a measured fear is far more reliable than affection. This doesn't mean abandoning empathy or kindness. Rather, it means recognizing that sustainable influence requires more than just being liked. It requires creating a situation where following your lead serves others' self-interest, and where failing to do so has consequences they wish to avoid. Part 3. Perception management, the appearance of virtue. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. This insight forms the cornerstone of Machiavellian perception management, the careful cultivation of public image separate from private reality. Machiavelli recognized that people judge primarily by appearances. The actual substance of character matters far less than how that character is perceived. This creates a powerful leverage point for anyone seeking to influence others. Control the narrative, control the perception, control the power. The first principle of perception management is selective virtue. A prince should appear merciful, faithful, humane, religious, and upright, and should even be so in reality, but he should have his mind so trained that when occasion requires it he may know how to change to the opposite. This isn't mere hypocrisy, it's strategic adaptation. No single virtue serves in all situations. Mercy can embolden enemies, honesty can reveal strategic advantages. Upholding every virtue at all times leads inevitably to defeat. In a world where others don't share that commitment, the solution is to cultivate the reputation for virtue while maintaining the flexibility to act otherwise when necessary. This duality, appearing consistently virtuous while selectively practicing virtue, creates maximum freedom of action while minimizing reputation damage. The second principle is symbolic action. Machiavelli noted that most people judge by the outcome rather than the process. A few visible symbolic actions often outweigh consistent behavior in shaping perception. The modern politician who stages a single publicized visit to a disaster area often receives more credit than one who quietly implements effective long-term aid. The manager who publicly recognizes one employee's achievement often appears more supportive than one who consistently provides unpublicized assistance. By understanding this tendency, you can strategically invest in high-visibility actions that shape perception broadly rather than spreading effort evenly across all activities. The appearance of virtue strategically deployed often yields greater returns than virtue consistently practiced but poorly showcased. The third principle is information control. The prince who creates a false impression of himself and conceals his true aims will always find people who let themselves be deceived by controlling what others know. You shape what they believe. This doesn't necessarily mean lying, which risks catastrophic exposure, but rather selective emphasis and strategic timing of truth, highlighting favorable information while minimizing unfavorable facts, releasing difficult news during times of distraction, packaging uncomfortable truths within larger, more appealing narratives. The modern public relations industry operates entirely on these Machiavellian principles, carefully crafting perception through information management. The most effective manipulators aren't those who fabricate reality, but those who selectively present it to serve their purposes. The fourth principle is arrate representation. Princes should delegate unpopular duties to others while dispensing favors themselves. By associating yourself personally with positive actions while distancing yourself from negative ones, you shape how people experience your influence. This explains why effective leaders often personally deliver good news while having subordinates communicate bad news, why they associate themselves directly with successes while attributing failures to circumstances or subordinates. This isn't mere self-protection, it's strategic perception management that preserves their ability to lead effectively. For those who find these tactics disturbing, remember Machiavelli didn't invent them, he simply described what successful power holders have always done. Understanding these mechanics doesn't obligate you to employ them, but ignorance of them makes you vulnerable to those who do. Before we continue exploring Machiavelli's insights on maintaining control, I want to invite those of you finding value in this philosophical exploration to subscribe to the channel. We regularly examine these profound philosophical ideas that most content creators won't touch now. Let's continue with some of Machiavelli's most practical insights. Part 4: The Prince's Toolbox: Practical Tactics Beyond His Broader Principles. Machiavelli described specific tactical approaches for gaining and maintaining control. These form a practical toolbox for influence that remains remarkably effective 500 years later. The first tool is strategic generosity. Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. Machiavelli understood that material interests often outweigh emotional or moral considerations in motivating behavior. By strategically providing benefits to others, you create both gratitude and dependency. The key word is strategic. Generosity should be visible, memorable, and clearly attributed to you personally. Anonymous or subtle generosity builds little influence. The benefits should also create ongoing alignment between the recipient's interests and your own. This explains why effective leaders ensure their teams know exactly who to thank for bonuses, promotions, or opportunities. Why politicians emphasize the specific benefits they've secured for constituents. Why savvy networkers do favors that position them as ongoing resources rather than one-time helpers. The second tool is calculated mercy. Men should either be caressed or eliminated because they will avenge minor injuries but cannot avenge severe ones. When dealing with opposition, half measures often create the worst outcomes. Either fully convert opponents into supporters through generous reconciliation or completely remove their ability to oppose you. This explains why effective leaders either fully forgive, give, and reintegrate employees who've made mistakes or remove them entirely rather than maintaining them in diminished positions where resentment festers. Why smart negotiators either reach comprehensive agreement or walk away cleanly, rather than settling for partial arrangements that leave grievances active. The third tool is manufactured crisis. Never waste a good crisis is the modern formulation of Machiavelli's insight that disruption creates opportunity for power consolidation. During normal times, existing power structures resist change. During crisis, people accept measures they would otherwise reject. This doesn't necessarily mean creating artificial problems, but rather recognizing natural disruptions as opportunities to implement desired changes under the banner of necessity. The lead who has prepared changes in advance can introduce them during turbulent periods when resistance is weakened by uncertainty and fear. The fourth tool is strategic alliance. The prince should be the only one from whom favors are expected. By positioning yourself as the gateway to benefits, you ensure others must work through you rather than around you. This creates both leverage and information advantage in organizational contexts. This means structuring processes so approvals, resources, or opportunities flow through you. In social contexts, it means becoming the connector who introduces people to opportunities rather than the endo of such networks. The more you become the pathway to what others want, the more power you exert with minimal force. The fifth tool is predictive consistency. Nothing makes a prince more esteemed than undertaking great enterprises and giving striking examples of his own abilities. By establishing a pattern of successful predictions and actions, you create an aura of competence that enhances your influence regardless of whether each individual decision is optimal. This explains why effective leaders often make highly visible commitments and ensure they're achieved even at significant cost. The demonstration of capability and reliability creates a perception of inevitability around their leadership that discourages opposition before it forms. These tools aren't abstract theories but practical approaches observed across centuries of power dynamics, from boardrooms to political campaigns to social hierarchies. Those who intuitively or deliberately apply these Machiavellian tactics instantly outmaneuver those who ignore them. Part 5: The Modern Machiavellian Subtle Control. In today's world, Machiavelli wrote for princes ruling city-states, but his insights apply with surprising precision to modern contexts where direct coercion is rarely an option. Today's most effective manipulators have simply adapted his principles to contemporary environments. In professional settings, modern Machiavellians rarely threaten or demand. Instead, they create environments where others voluntarily choose the desired actions. They shape incentive structures rather than issuing commands. They influence perception rather than controlling behavior directly. Consider how this manifests in everyday tactics. The strategic information broker doesn't hoard all knowledge but selectively shares information that shapes others' decisions. While appearing transparent, they don't lie. They simply emphasize certain truths while downplaying others. They time revelations for maximum impact rather than immediate disclosure. The office Machiavellian doesn't openly undermine rivals but ensures their successes are attributed to luck or team effort, while their failures receive focused attention. They don't spread rumors but ask innocent questions that plant doubts. I'm sure there's a good explanation for why the Johnson Project Missed its deadline again. The social manipulator doesn't demand compliance but creates situations where the desired behavior becomes the path of least resistance. They leverage social pressure rather than personal authority. Everyone else has already agreed to contribute. The relationship controller doesn't make explicit threats but ensures their partner understands the consequences of non-compliance through subtle reminders of dependency. I'm so glad I could help you with that career introduction. These modern applications share common elements: indirect rather than direct pressure, plausible deniability, leverage over force, and perception management over overt control. The Iron Fist now wears a velvet glove, but the underlying mechanics remain recognizably Machiavellian. What makes these approaches particularly effective is that they operate beneath conscious, resist obvious manipulation, but remain vulnerable to subtler forms that trigger automatic responses rather than deliberate consideration. The ultimate modern Machiavellian tactic may be meta-manipulation, creating the perception that people are making free choices while actually constraining their options and information to produce predictable decisions by preserving the illusion of autonomy while directing outcomes. Modern influencers achieve control without triggering resistance. This explains why effective leaders often present predetermined decisions as collaborative processes, why marketers create false choices that all lead to purchase, why negotiators offer concessions on minor points to secure agreement on major ones while appearing flexible for those concerned about being manipulated. Awareness provides the best defense. Understanding these mechanics doesn't make you immune to them, but it allows you to recognize manipulation attempts and make more conscious choices about how to respond. The practical question isn't whether to engage with Machiavellian tactics, but how to engage with them. Blind rejection leaves you vulnerable. Uncritical acceptance risks moral compromise. The middle path, understanding these dynamics without being controlled by them, offers the most sustainable approach to navigating a world where Machiavellian principles operate, whether acknowledged or not. If you're finding these insights valuable, consider subscribing to our channel. We regularly explore these philosophical ideas that offer practical wisdom for navigating life's complexities. Now let's conclude with some final thoughts on the ethics of Machiavellian thinking. Machiavelli's insights provoke an uncomfortable question: is understanding manipulation itself a form of corruption? Does seeing clearly how control works inevitably lead to using that knowledge for self-interest? His own answer was more nuanced than many realize. A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. The world contains those who will use these principles regardless of moral qualms. Ignorance of them doesn't create immunity, it creates vulnerability. Perhaps the most mocking Avalon insight is recognizing that power itself is neutral. The mechanics of influence can serve noble purposes or corrupt ones. The same principles that allow manipulation also enable leadership, protection, and positive change. The difference lies not in the tools but in the aims they serve. Influence directed toward collective benefit rather than personal gain. Control exercised for protection rather than exploitation. Perception management that inspires rather than deceives. Understanding how human beings are moved, their fears, desires, perceptions, and behaviors isn't inherently corrupting. It's simply seeing clearly what has always been true. What matters is what you do with that vision. Machiavelli himself might suggest that the most powerful position isn't blind idealism or cynical manipulation, but clear-eyed realism, coupled with chosen virtue, not because it always succeeds, but because it allows you to act effectively in the world as it actually exists, neither naive nor corrupted, but aware